And I've been asking myself, why aren't FPV drone simulators like The Sims? You know, The Sims with the people. Why aren't they like that? Well, I started thinking, if they were, then it would probably just be a town full of really depressed and broke people waiting for their pre-orders by their mailbox and breaking a bunch of crap and only having a job so they could buy new props. I don't know. It would probably be really depressing. And like the top 1% of wealth in that community would be the people who run the FPV stores. So yeah, it's just not a pretty picture. I guess that's why they don't do that, because it would just be something that runs you straight off. But anyway, hey everybody, I'm Bacon Ninja, and today we're actually going to cover 6 of the best FPV drone simulators in 2023. And the price ranges for these things are going to go anywhere from free up to over $20. And most of them you can get on Steam. Some you have to download elsewhere, but I'm going to cover all the good and the bad because I get a ton of questions about what simulator do I need to buy as a new pilot? What simulator do I need? Because a lot of pilots want to start out in a simulator because you don't break stuff and have to pay for it, which would lead to a really depressing Sims community. Instead, you can just break stuff in the sim and actually not really break stuff. You're going to see. I crashed a lot when I was shooting the footage for this stuff, so you're going to see what crashes look like. I'm going to talk to you about all the graphics, the physics, the options, all the features and thingamabobs for these simulators. But anyway, before we get off into a tangent, just let me tell you exactly how I'm going to focus this. These simulators are used with a radio. So these are simulators that are radio compatible, and they are simulators focused on larger FPV freestyle. So not really whoops or small things like that. I looked at things that were really freestyle focused in a normal 5-inch range, and that's the picks that I took. So there may be some simulators outside of the way I have this list organized that are better for things like tiny whoops or racing or other kinds of things. Long range. Do you want to sim your long range? Some of these you can actually do that in. But other sims may be better suited for those things. This is really focused on PC simulation with a radio and freestyle in the 5-inch range, even though maybe some of these can do other things and, you know, maybe on Xbox or PlayStation or something like that. But anyway, let's dive straight down into it and start with number 6, my last favorite pick out of the entire list. And number 6 is going to be AIDrone Simu. And its claim to fame is that you can actually load your black box logs into it and fly your drone from real life in the simulator. Well, I have to say, I found that to be nothing but a gimmick. In fact, when I first started with this software, you couldn't load the black box logs at all. Like, it wouldn't parse them. It was really, really bad at it. But apparently they fixed that, and I have loaded a few. And I still feel like I have to tweak the settings all the time to get my drone where I want it, no matter what I do with the black box upload. I can load a black box and it still flies not like my quad in real life. So that whole thing is kind of its claim to fame, and I think it's kind of a miss. Sorry, AIDrone Simu. I don't find that very useful. I still have to go and adjust everything. But what I will say is that a lot of people have loaded their black box logs up to it, and you can download their models. So you can download something someone uploaded, tweaked, got flying the way they wanted it, and then flies. And they name it normally the manufacturer and model of the drone. So if you have a specific drone at home or thinking of ordering a drone, if you're a total beginner, and you want to try something that maybe feels like it, AIDrone Simu might have something in the downloads list that can do that for you. However, uploading your own is really not feasible. But because it does have enough physics settings per quad, you can really make a lot of adjustments and get things the way you want it. Some of these other ones don't have very many physics settings. This one really does hit it right out of the park with all the different settings you can mess with. So if it does anything well, it is that. However, the black box thing is a total gimmick. And one other thing it does well is have some decent sized maps. There's some good variety. It has plenty of maps. There's quite a few maps in that one. But I'll say that they don't look good. The graphics just aren't very good. And I tested all these sims on my machine that I do all of my production with. It's not a super new machine, but it does have a Ryzen 7 processor, an RTX 2070, and 32 gigs of high-speed memory with full solid-state drives. So it's not like it's brand new, but it's also not terrible. And AIDrone Sim just feels laggy, disconnected, and doesn't look pretty either. If it looked really pretty, maybe I could get over some of the laggy and disconnected. However, it just doesn't look pretty enough to make up for it for me. It's really just, I can't really recommend this one to you. This isn't the one that I would pick, and that's why it's number 6 on the list. And it does cost $19.99 on Steam. If you feel like checking it out, you can always check it out. And I don't remember what Steam's return policy is, but worst case, you're out 20 bucks. And what's 20 bucks in the total scheme of how much money you're going to waste in FPV? Probably not that much. And if you're new, you may not know it yet, but it's a total money pit. And this is where the money pit starts, right up front with software. Anyway, it is a paid one and it is number 6. And there is a free option that's above it in the list. I just had to put it in there because it exists, and a lot of people do really like it. I just haven't found any reason to like it over the other ones that we're going to get to in a minute. And speaking of other ones, number 5 is actually a free one, and it's Orqa FPV Skydive. And did I mention this one is like free? It's free. How can you go wrong with a free sim? You really can't. There are some downsides to this sim, one being that no, it doesn't look very pretty. It's not the prettiest sim in the world. Another being it only has 3 maps. It only has 3 maps, and the maps are fairly small. Some other downsides to it are you don't have any adjustable quads. The quad is the quad. It's the only quad you have. You can't download any more models. You can't make it look any different. You can't make it fly any different. The only thing you can do is adjust the rates. And the rates tab looks a little bit funny because all the other sims are going to let you type your rates in the same way you would in your flight controller firmware. However, Orqa makes you slider the thing. I don't know why they didn't just give you an option to type the numbers in, but they make you use sliders. And one of the sliders is actually mislabeled. It says, I believe it's pitch RC rate twice, even though one of them is actually pitch RC expo. I don't know why they did that, but whatever. You can figure it out. That's what it is. It's free. I mean, come on. The physics are decent. It has 3 maps. You aren't going to go crazy here. They're not huge. You can't fly a bunch of different drones, but you can get into it for no money. It works well with your controller. It doesn't lag. It'll probably work on lower end machines. In fact, I've run it on machines without discrete graphics cards, and it does run, and it completely supports your radio with all the functions of arming, flip over, all the things you would need to learn as a new FPV pilot, or if you just want to pick up a different sim and try it out, it's totally worth getting. It's free. It's free. How can I say it any more times? This simulator is free. Yeah, it's the only one on the list that is. It's the only one that I felt like made the cut for freestyle. There are a couple of other free options, but this is probably the best free option you're going to get. It looks the best, it flies the best. No, it's not super manipulatable, but it has multiplayer somehow, if that works. And yeah, it's free. Come on, it's free. And rolling right on to number 4, we have Liftoff. Liftoff is a very well-known sim that is available on Rotor Riot's website and Steam as well. I recommend you buy it. Well, wherever you want to buy it. If you feel like supporting Rotor Riot, support them. They can give you a digital download key. You can go get it. It's going to come from Steam either way. And this one is a paid one at $19.99, but it's really pretty decent. This is what I would call a middle ground simulator. It has decent physics, it has decent graphics, it has a decent selection of maps that are decently large with decent amounts of obstacles. But where this one does stand out is that it has a full drone builder bench, which although it really serves no purpose because almost nothing you do to the quad actually affects the way it flies. I mean, it says it adds the weight number up and the prop thrust. I don't really know what it's doing in the background because there are no sliders or way to manipulate the physics, which the physics are decent, a little bit floaty, but there's no way to change them if you want to. But you can go into this really cool bench and build your own quad with your own parts. However, I will say the part selection is pretty lacking and stuck pretty well into what Rotor Riot used to sell. I haven't seen much new stuff in there. I've seen a lot of the Rotor Riot frames. There's some decent LiPo manufacturers. The camera selection is lacking. The HD camera, because you can put a GoPro or something on top of your quad, that selection is lacking. There are no new Hero series of cameras in there. The prop selection is lacking. I can rarely find a prop that I actually fly in the list. That may or may not be you. And if you're totally new, it really doesn't make a ton of sense, right? Like to just randomly put parts on there and see what they do, because it's not going to impact the quad in the same way a real quad would be impacted. However, you can go get some presets that other people have made that may be closer, but I don't find it to make a huge difference in the physics, so just bear that in mind. It may look pretty, it may look cool in the pictures in the background of the simulator, but it's really not going to make much difference. So I'm going to chalk this one up to not really having a lot of physics adjustability options, which is kind of a knock on it. But if it's important to you, this one is great at multiplayer because it does have a multiplayer section. And the multiplayer is actually pretty decent. You can see all the other pilots, rooms are easy to get in and out of. It's very collaborative. There is a text chat. It's pretty good, actually, if you care about multiplayer. Again, I don't have any friends, so I'm not playing multiplayer with anybody. I've done some multiplayer simulating, but it wasn't in Liftoff, although I have piddled around a little bit with multiplayer in Liftoff just to see who's out there. And I've never really caught anybody that wanted to hang around or have a conversation, but we did fly together and I saw their flight lines and it was kind of cool. And last but not least, you can chase things in the sim. There are things to chase. There is a track with a couple of drift cars. However, stipulation, the chase options are part of a DLC that you have to purchase separately. So $19.99 is the base price for Liftoff, and then you have to purchase the DLC separately. There are some DLCs for things like Slipstream, which is where you would do the car chases. There's one for DJI FPV if you're flying ye olde DJI Potato and you want to simulate that, because Rotor Riot and DJI were like buddies for a long time, so they put a simulator in the Lugu's thing that they have with Liftoff to simulate that. So if you're into simulating the potato, you can fly the potato. There are other options like Liftoff micro drones if you're into micros. However, that is a completely separate game, so you don't get any intro into micros in this, unfortunately. Yeah, if you're into micros, man. But I'm focusing on the 5-inch freestyle, so that's not really how I rated this simulator, but it is sitting right in the middle ground so far. And tied for third place is Velocidrone. Velocidrone comes in at $21, is not available on Steam. In fact, it's the only one on this list that is not available on Steam. You have to go elsewhere to purchase it. And when you do purchase it, you're going to notice something. There's a base license for this game, but there's also a ton of DLCs for it. There's a wide selection of DLCs. This game probably has the most extended content out of any of the simulators we're going to talk about. But you got to pay for each one of them. So you're going to pay $21 as it is in British pounds on the website. I did a conversion. It's like $21.07. So you're going to pay $21 for the base license, and then you're going to pay for other things. But I would say it's probably worth it. Velocidrone is actually a really good simulator. It has decent physics, although the physics kind of lend themselves more towards racing. It has pretty decent physics. And the graphics are okay. They're not the best graphics in the world, but the flight feel is really good and it's very connected because, like I said, this simulator really lends itself toward racing. And because racing, you got to have response time and things. And they've really thought about that in the chain of events that happen pre-rendering that cause latency. So this one is actually really good at that. Velocidrone is also known for having a ton of maps because it has a built-in map builder that is very convenient and easy for people to use. And a lot of the top track makers will make maps, and a ton of people in the community will make maps. In fact, someone made a map of Nick Burns' house. It was actually really, really good, a really good representation. I flew a little bitty quad on that one because in Velocidrone you can fly little quads if you're into that. Although, again, this list is not specified toward the little quads. It does have a large selection of little quads. There are just a ton of maps, and along with the ton of maps, there are a ton of options for different frames you can fly. And unlike what we saw in Liftoff, the changing of the frames and the changing of components here really does make a difference in how the drone flies. But not only that, you have a lot more ability to manipulate physics with this one. There are a ton of physics sliders, and they are per drone. So you don't have to worry about when you want to switch between two different 5-inch drones, the physics changing because the weight of the quad changes or whatever changes with the different model you're using. You can adjust the physics per quad. And that really, really does help because you can get this simulator feeling very, very good. What it lacks in physics, you can adjust for in this one. It does a very, very good job of that. And along with that, it has the best multiplayer experience because, again, racing. And racing requires more than one person. And that's where I spend a lot of my time in multiplayer if I'm gonna multiplayer, because that's where racing lives. Velocidrone is where racing back alley, hopefully not betting your paycheck, lives. Hopefully you're not losing any money on Velocidrone. Maybe you're winning money on Velocidrone. If you are, hit me up in the comments and let me know how that's going for you. And give me some of those good tips so I can double my $20 that I have to my name from buying all the drone parts. But coming back around, really the downsides to Velocidrone are the meh level graphics. They're kind of mid-range, and the fact that you may have to purchase a bunch of DLCs to really get where you're wanting to go and get all the functionality you want if you want to do things like chase cars or have a bunch of models or have a bunch of levels or maybe air-to-air combat, because there's an air-to-air combat plugin, which can cost money for Velocidrone. It's a really solid option, and that's why it tied for number 3. But it tied with a very, very solid option that's a whole lot newer to the market and is tied with it for a few different reasons. And tied right up with Velocidrone, sitting in number 2, is TRYP FPV, which comes in at $14.99 on Steam. And if you haven't played this one, you've probably seen it. And you may have seen it because I just put out a little sim edit from it that was from their newest map. It's a winter-themed map. And speaking of maps, the reason why this is sitting up so high on the list is really twofold. The maps are gorgeous, gorgeous. The graphics in this game are literally remarkable. They have a whole subsystem just for doing cinematic stuff because it looks so good in this game. You can literally take footage out of it, make an edit, and kind of make people have to think twice about what they're watching. Now, the buildings don't look the best, but the landscapes are just amazing, and the lighting is brilliant, and the water details are amazing. It does, however, mean that you're going to need a higher-end machine to run it, and if you're running it on something lower-end, then you're probably going to want to fall back to number 3, which was Velocidrone, or all the way back to number 5, which was Orca, because those two run a lot better on lower-end machines. This one is really going to eat up your GPU and your CPU and your memory, all of the things. But when it works, oh my god, it works. And the physics are good. They're above average. They are not perfect because no sim has perfect physics, but they are well above average, and the latency, the time between when you move the stick and when the quad moves on the screen, is actually pretty minimal. I don't feel disconnected in this sim. And if you feel disconnected in sims pretty often, I'm actually going to write a companion article on my website, letsgetgreasy.com, about all of the simulator settings I use for various simulators and things like how to make the sim feel more connected by changing your graphics card settings and making sure your radio is set up correctly. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, head on over to the website. I will post a link below whenever I get that done. It may be about a week from now because it takes Bacon Ninja forever to do anything because Bacon Ninja has small children and a full-time job and makes these videos like an idiot. So yeah, it takes me a while, but it'll be there. Just keep checking and head over to the website and look. And maybe I'll make a community post when I get it done. So if you haven't yet, just subscribe and you'll see the community post when it comes up. And then you can go head over to that article and get some tips about how to make your sims feel better. But piling on to the amazing graphics and large levels, not only are the levels large and beautiful, they're populated with a bunch of interactive events. And you can use a menu system within TRYP to trigger these events. They are things like chasing cars, chasing snowboarders, chasing motorcycles, all kinds of different stuff. You can follow paragliders, you can follow wingsuit riders, you can chase hot air balloons. There's a ton of things in there. Each level has a variety of different things you can start, and you just get to it by bringing up the menu. Now, there's one downside to TRYP, it's the menu, because the menu seems to hide. It hides itself, and then no matter what key you press, it just doesn't come up. The menus are difficult. They take some time to get used to, but once you're used to them, it's perfectly fine. And let me give you a hint. To get to the event menu, you press M. And if you don't see any menu pop up when you press M, you press the left shift key, which will enable the HUD, which is where all of your camera angle and things are. If you've got it hidden, and the menu will start working again. Apparently, when you have the HUD hidden, the menu hides. If there's one downside to this one, it's that it can be really frustrating when you're new to it, but once you get it figured out, it's not too big a deal. And other things to figure out, this one gives you the ability to build multiple different kinds of quads in different sizes for things like mountain surfing, or like we're talking about here, freestyle. And each quad has different settings in it for physics, so you can make them feel accurate. And that is a bonus. So even if it's a little bit off to you physics-wise, you can adjust it. You aren't locked into the field permanently. If you don't like it, you can make it work for you, which is really important in a simulator. It really, really is. TRYP is pretty darn good, but you'll notice it's number 2. And that's because sitting at number 1 is Uncrashed, which I hope you've heard of if you've been in the sim world. If you're brand new, I don't expect you've ever heard of Uncrashed. Of course, the word uncrashed is kind of weird because it resembles the opposite of having been crashed, which is not something we typically say. But Uncrashed is a great sim, and I think it wraps a lot of the things that are great about other sims up into it, even though it was technically around before TRYP. It is beautiful. Now, it's beautiful in a different way than TRYP is. The details in the world are what are beautiful about Uncrashed. The actual buildings and the foliage and the way it's all laid out is really lifelike. Even though TRYP has buildings and things, you can tell they're fake buildings. The landscapes are beautiful, but the buildings are fake. In Uncrashed, the buildings are remarkably well detailed, and you get to freestyle the crap out of them. And they're beautiful, and it's responsive. And the physics are very, very good. Out of all of the simulators we've talked about, the physics in Uncrashed are by far the closest to me to the real world. Now, that's not straight out of the box. I did have to do some tweaking. I mostly upped the ratio of gravity so that gravity was just a little bit more, because that takes care of the floatiness. And yeah, I just showed on the screen where I did that in case you're wondering. That will also be in the article if you want to hunt down that article here in about a week, whenever I get it done. If it's already a week past this video, then the link's there. So if you need it, go click it. But the physics are wonderful. The downside to the physics in Uncrashed is that you only get one quad. There's only one quad available to you, which means that any physics changes you make are the physics changes you're going to have in the entire thing. You can't switch quads around. You have the one. You can't change frames. You can't customize parts. You can't customize anything else. But you do have plenty of customization for the one quad you have. And it feels just really, really good. Really well connected, right where it should be, and easy to manipulate. They did a really good job on the physics for this one. And along with the beauty of the maps, there are quite a few, and they have added a bunch since it first came out. When it first came out, I think there were a total of 6. Now you actually have to look at a whole screen full of maps to pick the ones you want. There's a lot of variance in there, and they're relatively decent size, and there are just a ton of well thought out obstacles in Uncrashed to learn freestyle around. There's places to go find a trippy spin, you want to do matty flips, you want to do power loops, anything you want to do, you can find a spot to do it in Uncrashed. It will be beautiful, it will be responsive. But again, make sure your PC can handle it, because this one will, just like TRYP, eat up a lot of PC power. However, this one has a little less latency to the control link than TRYP does. At least it feels that way, and I did set all my simulators up in the same way with a frame rate cap at 60 FPS, so I should have had about the same average latency. I used the same monitor, the same computer, the same radio, all of the things, but this one just felt by far head and shoulders the best out of all of them. And if that's what you're looking for in a sim, then Uncrashed is what you're looking for in a sim, and that's why it is sitting at number 1 with the highest rating in my list. If you'll notice, there have been a bacon strips rating throughout this thing. Let me know in the comments below if you like the idea of the strip rating, because as I do reviews and other content where I have to ranky things, I think I'm just going to use the strips. If you could think of something better, let me know in the comments too, but I kind of like the idea. A 1-to-5 ratio of strips of bacon. It's like, do you want a small breakfast or a large breakfast? But anyway, that is my rundown of the 6 2023 simulators you should be looking at, and maybe not looking at for at least number 6. There are a lot of other simulators out there. Let me know in the comments below what you're flying, if it isn't one of these, or if it is one of these, which ones are your favorite. Now, I asked my patrons about a bunch of these too, and it seems like the patrons really went for Liftoff, Uncrashed. I didn't think anybody was flying TRYP. When I did post the TRYP video, there were a lot of people that really liked Uncrashed, really liked Liftoff. There were some people that really liked TRYP too. Those are the ones that are kind of the standard right now. And if you have a computer that can do it, that's where you should go with it. If you don't, you might try Orqa FPV Skydive or Velocidrone. And no matter what you buy, you might just pick up Velocidrone anyway, because everybody has Velocidrone. And if you feel like doing anything community-wise with multiplayer, that's probably where you're going to live. But when it comes to the way it looks, the way it flies, and how well you can freestyle in it, Uncrashed is the winner. Now, go down to the comments and let me know if you agree with me or disagree with me, because it's completely possible that you do. And you might notice that this has cost me a lot because I had to buy all of these. Well, I bought them all already, but the way I did it was with my patron support, because this channel is completely supported by the patrons and the channel members and Buy Me a Coffee donations. And if you feel like this has been helpful, or you just want to leave me a Buy Me a Coffee donation and make fun of me and the little thing you get to type out, yeah, I'm totally cool with that too, then yeah, maybe consider it. If not, that's cool. I'll keep flying these simulators, and you'll probably see this ugly hairy face come up on your newsfeed or your For You or your watch list. I don't know what it's called in all the different places, but YouTube calls it something, and I don't know that I've ever looked at what it's called. Your recommended shelf? That sounds correct. If that's what it is, I'll probably be there anyway, whether you want to support the channel with your patronage or your coffee buying or anything else. But until next time, go fly some simulators. See what you like. Tell me what you think of them, and I'll catch you later.